Hi, I'm Lee Smathers of Lee Smathers Photography. I'm based in Fair Lawn, New Jersey, and typically cover within a 100 to 150 mile radius. So East Pennsylvania, West Connecticut, parts of New York, all the way out to Long Island. I consider myself an artist primarily. A lot of people say they're a photographer, they say they're a videographer. I'm an artist, and the camera is my tool. Both of my parents were artists. My mom was a textile artist, my dad was a potter. They both went to art school. So I grew up in a very fine artsy family. We did a lot of things art related. My journey as an artist began with drawing. I used to draw baseball cards. I remember back in the 1980s when George Bush Sr. Pitched a ball for a baseball game. I was inspired and I drew a baseball card of George Bush Sr. I drew baseball cards, I drew comic books, a lot of superhero stuff. And when I was in high school, I started to get serious about art as a career. So the gears in my head were trying to think how I could make a living as an artist. So I studied commercial art, did a lot of poster design and things like that in high school, won a lot of awards for some of the posters that I did. I was accepted to the Savannah College of Art and Design. I started with a focus in graphic design, but after the first year, I was very disappointed because I didn't like being behind a desk sitting at the computer. So it had me thinking about my future as an artist. As a graphic designer, we had a course for photography, Introduction to Photography. I took that class and I fell in love with photography. My parents had given me an SLR camera to take photos of my artwork when I was in high school. And in college at the Savannah College of Art and Design, I learned how to use my camera. And like I said, I fell in love with it, and everything's history from there. My first job as a photographer was at Craig Paul Studio in Savannah, Georgia. An alumni of the Savannah College of Art and Design. He was looking for an assistant to help him shoot weddings and do studio portrait photography at his studio in Savannah, Georgia. Craig Paul Studio had a brand that was very similar to my own. He was the photographer. He had a team of people that were working to support him. I was his assistant, carried equipment, second shot for weddings for him, just worked very closely with Craig. That business model, the way that he ran his schedule, his pricing, his packages, all of that has influenced and inspired how I work today. Craig was my teacher. He was my mentor. He is my mentor. I still talk with Craig. Moved away from wedding photography and I moved to South Korea. I was so fascinated by this foreign culture. 1 year in Korea led to 18 years. I worked my way up as a photography professor, taught photography at several different universities in South Korea, and there was that, if you're a teacher, you know that you don't have as much time to practice what you teach. And that happened to me. My camera would often sit in a bag in the closet and I didn't use it, even though I was teaching it all the time. So I hit my 40s, and my midlife crisis was, I'm an artist, but I'm not doing art. I need to get back into the field. So I quit my job as a professor. A great job, excellent job. I loved my students, I loved working with them, but the passion to create was lost. And I had a desire to get back into photography, to shoot again, which led to my decision to move back to the United States. I'm originally from Nashville, Tennessee, so I'm a Southern boy. I've got Southern hospitality all over me. A lot of people ask me, what is your coverage area? What is your ideal coverage area? Well, I love that I live in northern New Jersey, and I get to travel to parts of Pennsylvania. I get to travel to parts of Connecticut. I get to travel to New York, to southern New Jersey. I love to travel and experience all these new things and just learn more about this area that is so foreign to me. Another thing that Craig had taught me, he told me that a business will begin to get successful after 3 years of being in business. I passed that 3 years of business, and I'm really excited about the future of my business and the success of the continuing success of my business. In today's wedding photography industry, there are several different styles, popular styles of photography. There's the light and airy, there's the dark and moody, and there's kind of the classic and timeless. I consider my style to be a classic and timeless style. Why? Why do I aspire to be a classic and timeless? Personally, I believe this stems from my roots in film photography. In film photography, there was not a whole lot of editing. The look that came from the film would be the kind of a result you would get. So a lot of film photographers would choose a film and they would stick with that, and that's how they would get their look. My work is a classic and timeless feel, because 20 years from now, when you're my age someday and you're looking back on your photos, I don't want you to say, oh, that was so 2020s. It's something it's like blue jeans. Blue jeans aren't fading away. The classic and timeless is not fading away. It's not a filtered effect. It's very minimal styled effect. It's basically just for the exposure, the contrast, and a little bit of a style, not a whole lot of style. Not only is the look of the photography a classic and timeless style, I believe that the type of photography that I deliver to my clients in the posing and everything is also a classic and timeless feel as well. What do I mean by that? I have a lot of different poses that I have in my head, and sometimes different poses work for different people, and sometimes poses make people look awkward. What influences my photography? What influences my photography style? I believe that for the nearly 3 decades that I was teaching, and I still teach art as well, I'm influenced by all of the artists that I would teach to my students, looking through the history books, studying photography, studying art history, I believe, like, for example, lighting-wise, I love Rembrandt. And before Rembrandt was Caravaggio, so it should be Caravaggio lighting, not Rembrandt lighting. Rembrandt made it popular. Like, I love that kind of light that Caravaggio had in his paintings. These kind of things inspire me. I'm also really influenced by music videos. I used to watch Chinese music videos, Coco Lee and things like that. And watching music videos, which I think is like the current trend of things, it inspired me to get creative with camera angles and things like that. So I can't really say that there's a specific source, but just being raised as an artist, teaching art for so long, looking at art, studying art, all of these things really have shaped and molded the vision for how I see. I really strongly encourage that all couples do an engagement session or a portrait session with their photographer. When a couple inquires with me, they tell me that the first time that they're ever having their professional portraits done is on their wedding day. That's really cool for me to be the one to do that for you. A lot of people don't know, like, how they photograph, and so, because sometimes they have a better side, the left side, the right side, and on an engagement setting, you can learn, you know, what are your angles. I can learn what are your angles. Like, I've noticed sometimes during an engagement session that the groom goes in for a kiss, and it's like a quick peck, and it takes like a second. And even as fast as I'm using my shutter to try to capture it, I miss it. Now imagine if we go into an engagement session and we're working together, we practice doing the dip, we do lots of kisses during all of the photo shoots that we do. And I noticed these things that you guys don't spend a lot of time kissing. You don't do long kisses. Having that experience, I can give you guys some feedback on what we can do for the wedding day. It's always important to communicate your vision with me so that I know what you want and that sort of thing. But typically that's the way that I like to recommend things. That process is usually I come in, meet and greet, set up the location, then I'll start to grab details. I like to get a shot of the dress, hang it up in a nice ideal location, do a flat lay, put together items, for example, your shoes, invitations. I like to have 2 copies of the invitations because sometimes there's front and backs, and there's also fronts and inside. So it's nice to have 2 copies of your invitations. Each client's contract has me arriving 30 minutes before the agreed start time. Me starting 30 minutes in advance gives me time to do meet and greets. God forbid there's traffic, I'm gonna be there on time. It's also really nice to look around the venue, look around the premises, find ideal photo locations. If you're doing a first look, which I highly recommend, let's talk about first looks. I can give you a lot of ideas about that. First looks are amazing. And it doesn't have to be with your special someone. It can be with other significant others. starting early, setting up, making sure that if the agreed time is 2 o'clock, I'm taking pictures at 2 o'clock. I do meet and greets so that I'm not wasting your time. And I make sure everything is organized so that I can get started and get to work, because that's what I'm getting paid to do. So I don't like being late. I don't like being late. I'm on the clock, and being there in advance, even if it's a venue or a location that I have been to multiple times, lighting can be different. Today, when we were walking around this location, our first choice got shot down, right? Because noise and things like this. You know, the chance happens. So it's good to be prepared. I'm an Eagle Scout. The Boy Scout model is to be prepared. I like to be prepared. Even when I'm walking outside of the house and I've got everything in the car, I do a double check to make sure I've got all my memory cards, I got everything charged up, everything's good. Over the years, I have done my share of second shooting, of assuming the role of videographer, and I can say that it's very important for the photographers, the videographers, the assistant videographers, the assistant photographers, the second shooters. It's very important for us to be aware of each other. When you're working with a second shooter, knowing where your second shooter is, what shots they're getting, kind of pre-visualizing what they're getting so that I'm getting something different. When I'm working with a videographer, I like to have the videographer side by side, the main videographer. And I like to have a second shooter with the second videographer if that is the case. That way we are being mindful of everyone's location and staying out of their shots. It's a personal, I wouldn't say it's a pet peeve of mine, but I don't like looking at my photos and having my assistants, having videographers in the shots. I want this to be sort of not really an unplugged ceremony, but I don't want the evidence of your capturers to be in my shots. So I try as much as I can to be very aware of the videographer and any assistants that we might have, to staying out of each other's shots. And usually this is a very quick, mutually understandable and agreed upon agreement from the very get-go. Like we would probably talk about this either on the phone if we've worked before together, or even on the day of, right? It's a very, if any experienced videographer or photographer will understand and respect that. On the day of, you can expect me to be dressed very similarly. This is how I show up to a wedding. I used to wear flower shirts, very bright flower shirts to weddings. I wanted to be a little bit fashionable, but a bride asked me one time that all her vendors wear solid black. And I was like, man, that sounds so typical of like a photographer to be dressed in all in black. And I didn't have an all black outfit, so I went out and I bought me an all black outfit. that wedding revolutionized my outfit because first of all, it made things simpler. I just have to have a black shirt and black pants and black shoes. But also, during that wedding, the couple table during the reception had so many reflections that when I looked at the photos, usually when I'm looking back at photos, I see my reflection. I could see my flower shirt reflection, and I stuck out like a sore thumb. But at this particular wedding, I was wearing all black, and I blended in to the reflection. And one of those points where I was talking about like your media team, your photographers, videographers, and their assistants trying to stay out of the pictures, I also want myself to be outside of the pictures. So me wearing all black is me trying to stay out of the pictures, to blend in into the shadows and not stick out like a sore thumb. And a lot of it's very interesting question, but a lot of potential clients ask me about the cameras that I use. I prefer to use 2 cameras. This is so I don't have to switch out lenses during the day, but also sometimes this memory card fills up and I can switch over to this camera. So it's nice to have them on me. You'll see this at like, I think most photographers I know use a camera harness. I use 2 cameras. If 2023 and 2024, that probably dates this video, but I'm even considering upgrading to having a 3rd camera. Be a good idea. I can see the use of having a 3rd camera as well. Potential clients also ask me about how do I ensure that your photos are safe. My camera records the same image twice. I have what's called a dual slot memory cards holder, and this ensures that if one of the memory cards goes bad, it's recording separately on and additionally on another SD card. I also prefer to use smaller SD cards. That way I'm constantly changing the SD cards, ensuring that, God forbid, something awful, that's probably not good to talk about calamities on this video, but I try to protect myself, and I always talk about insurance. Like when I'm taking photos, group photos, I try to take probably 10 to 15 pictures of the same thing because of eye blinks, out of focus, etc. Anyways, I just like insurance and making sure I got the shot. You're paying a lot of money for your professional team, and I want to make sure I'm doing the job the best I can, and just protecting myself and making sure everything that you want and need for your day is covered. A common term that is often used in the wedding vendor industry is, are we a good fit? And I think that is usually for the client to decide if we are a good fit. I myself am more of an introvert. Personality-wise, I'm more inward. I don't express myself very well. I think a lot of artists are probably that way. Ironically though, so how do I say this? So on your wedding day, I'm still an introvert. I'm usually in the shadows, being a kind of switching into like documentary photojournalist mode, where I'm taking photos of these moments that are happening. A lot of times clients will say, we didn't even notice you were there. And I guess that's a compliment sometimes. But other parts of your day, it's really important for the photographer to take charge. I have been a second shooter before, and I've seen some photographers that are just like, oh yeah, it's your day, it's just whatever happens. But that's not me. When we're doing formals, which is family pictures, which is wedding party pictures, couple pictures, the time that we have together for those photos is so short. On a traditional wedding, usually this is only time during the cocktail hour, which is less than an hour. I say less than an hour because yes, there might be an hour, cocktail hour might be an hour, but there's time that is used and it becomes more like 45 minutes. It is very, very, very important for the photographer, especially the photographer, to take charge. Usually the videographer follows the photographer's lead, and the photographer's got to get those shots. So I switch. I become like a transformer, and I transform into extrovert, take charge guy for those formal shots. Formal shots are very, 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 very important for me. And I am not afraid to explain why they are important for me. You see, I got married in South Korea, and my family came to South Korea to come to my wedding. So for 3 decades almost, I didn't get to see my family a lot. My dad, my mom, my sister, and her husband came to South Korea to my wedding. And those formal photos that I have of my dad are the last photos that I really have of myself with my dad. Formal photos of wedding are very important, really important for me. And I'm gonna take that initiative to make sure that you and your family have those photos because of how important they are for me. And our family is coming from all over the country, all over the world sometimes to come to your wedding. It's a big family event. And you might not see your family again like myself, or you might not see them in a while. So those formal photos are important. Even though I'm an introvert, I gotta take charge in that moment. If I don't take charge, nobody else will, and then I am failing you as a photographer by not getting the pictures that you need, your family needs, that everyone needs. So a couple of tips for especially the first tip that I have for photographers that are just getting started in wedding photography would be to, when it comes to doing those formal photos, that you do those in whatever location the ceremony is. I'll tell you why. we have attempted to take groups of people to a different location, and I've had people like dads go. They went home and they walked their dog. So we lost dad for family photo pictures. So I would recommend that wherever you are, get those family pictures in that location. So typically that's at the altar where the ceremony happened. It's usually very nicely decorated with flowers and you have a nice backdrop. It's also where the ceremony was, so it's very reminiscent of the wedding day. So it's very good for wedding pictures, in my opinion. So do those family pictures there. Get the family pictures done first. I always like to work with the large groups first. You have so many variables that can happen with those large groups. Get one side of the family done, then do the next side of the family, and dismiss them to go to the cocktail hour. Wedding party, couple pictures. If you have time, by all means, go somewhere else. Try different locations, get different different scenes, especially with the couple. But for those family pictures, don't attempt to do those in another location because you're going to lose somebody. Whether they're they have some difficulty getting there because of speed, mobility, or just find something else to do and they forget. So it's just better to get it done while everybody's there. That's my number one tip that I've just seen from experience, that whenever we try to move to a garden, we try to move to a park, we try to move to a different location by the beach, we miss somebody and that stalls things. And we want everybody in those pictures and they're going to be there in that moment right after the ceremony. So try to get those pictures done quickly and get it done as efficient as possible by doing it in that location. And then take the wedding party, the couple, and go somewhere else and do pictures if you'd like. So over the many years of doing photography and wedding photography, my equipment lineup has changed and some things have come back. Maybe they've been rotated out and they've been rotated back in. I was just speaking with my virtual assistant the other day, and she noticed that there were a couple of different styles with the look of the photography, and like, this wedding looks a little bit different, which is your style, and that sort of thing. And I had mentioned to her that at the end of 2021, I started implementing off-camera flash. And off-camera flash has revolutionized and sort of created a look to the photography that I had when I started wedding photography. We did a lot of off-camera flash then, and I brought it back, and I love using off-camera flash. I use off-camera flash usually primarily for the getting ready session and for the reception. Occasionally, if the light is low, I'll use off-camera flash for ceremony, but I prefer not to use flash during a ceremony because usually it is more of a reverent event, and I would prefer not to have the distraction of a flash. And I can usually take photos at a higher ISO during the ceremony to capture that moment. So, but I think off-camera flash is something that I highly recommend other photographers to at least try out and see if that's for you. I have bounced the flash off the wall, you know, done a lot of different things, and I just prefer the look of off-camera flash. How can you contact me? First of all, I recommend you come on over to my website at leesmathersphotography.com. I know that's a mouthful. We got a link somewhere up here, there, down there, somewhere in the comments. There's a link. You can go to that. First of all, website is super simple, okay? Super simple. Check us out. Sign up for my email tips. I'm really big on trying to help my couples out. Subscribe to the email sequence and we can try to help you out, give you some tips and more tips and guidelines on how to have a great, smoothly flowing wedding. Check us out, subscribe to that email sequence, and you can also follow me on Instagram at Lee Smathers Photography. One of the happiest moments as an artist is when someone compliments you on your work. And when a client says to me, Lee, we really like your work. What's the next step? We'd like to book you. That is a huge compliment to me. I take that to heart, that for whatever reason, maybe the pricing's right, maybe you like the style of my work, maybe you like my personality, maybe it's a combination of some of those or all of those. But it's a huge compliment to me, and I do not take that lightly. A client of mine becomes like a friend, and I'm gonna do whatever I can to make sure that you are well treated. It is written in your contract that I am your guaranteed main photographer, that I'm gonna be the one shooting your wedding. I take that very seriously. So you can bet your bottom dollar that I'm gonna be there.